into the party wagon and hold on to your pizza. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Epic Tales from the Sewers. Joining me today on the podcast is a very special guest whose artwork has graced the pages of such books as Masters of the Universe Thundercats, Masters of the Universe Injustice, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle Universe, and the 3 Batman Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle crossovers. Mr. Freddie Williams, how are you, sir?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on the show, Justin.
Yeah, thanks for being here. We didn't get to this before, but I am obviously a huge fan.
Well, thank you.
And just everything that you've touched seems to be from our childhood and like nostalgia and all that. You're hitting that sweet spot with a lot of us.
It's I'm very fortunate that I've been given the opportunity to draw this stuff, and also that the fan or reader reaction has been overall very, very positive. So because it is easy to mess that kind of thing up, and then you're right for the hills there. But I mean, especially the trajectory of my career leading up to Batman Ninja Turtles was very, very different. And then I got, just really lucky with my timing, and my editor, Jim Chadwick, for Batman Ninja Turtles, he by allowing me to draw that series, it opened up all these other doors to a different type of career that I've always been interested in. I mean, I used to love drawing He-Man and Thundercats. Those were contemporary and connected already in my brain.
Nice.
And
so headcanon.
Yeah, definitely. So Batman Ninja Turtles led to He-Man Thundercats, led to more Batman Ninja Turtles, led to the Injustice versus Masters of the Universe, and then more Batman Ninja Turtles, and all of that stuff has just spun off into other, more covers and short stories. And, it really is a dream come true. There's a lot of people who have done a great job on those crossovers, so I'm really fortunate that I got to draw them.
I could not picture anybody picking up that book when I read the first one, and then I got to the second one, and I'm like, I can't picture anybody else doing this artwork. You have Donatello juiced up with the venom going into him, and the second one is by far my favorite out of all 3 of those. And I love the third one too, just because of the crossover art design. It's like, oh, it's Leonardo, but it's also Nightwing. It's like, this is freaking amazing. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, the middle one, Donatello was the main character. And did I read somewhere? Did you tell me that Donatello is your favorite of the Turtles?
I'm a Leonardo guy. Donatello is my second favorite. But any story where you have excellent character growth or development or anything, like, you can take that to the bank. That's you can look at a Donatello story from 1991 where he builds a robot and fights vampires, and you can look at this one and it's the same sort of character voice, and it's so good. And he's so human, where I'm feeling inadequate and I wish I could be like Batman. That's such a relatable story. He's a superhero and he wants to be like his hero.
The majority of that I have to give a lot of credit to James Tynion, who is the writer for all 3 of those. And he's been writing Batman for the last year or so, and he's written a ton of other stuff as well. He's an incredible writer. So he has it's very easy to collaborate with him because he's so open and he just wants like the best ideas to win out. So early on in the production on the first volume of Batman Ninja Turtles, he already had a story.
Nice.
He pitched it before he and I ever spoke or anything, and then that was approved. And then in volumes 2 and 3, it was much more collaborative, even though it's not credited like Freddie co-wrote it, because I didn't. It was just more like James and I had a few conversations and email back and forths over the types of things I'd like to draw, the types of things, like, he would like pitch 5 or 6 things that were just on his mind, and then I might respond with kind of like a fresh pair of eyes, so to speak, like where I just had a different take on it than he did, and I would suggest it. And if he didn't think it was the right one, then it's definitely not, because he knows the right ideas whenever he sees it. So with Batman Ninja Turtles Volume 2, the one where Donnie is the main turtle for sure, the main story point that I suggested was having I wanted it to be a longer scene, but there was a scene where that was supposed to mirror, in Volume 1, the Turtles find Batman's, the Batcave. and they're just blown away by how amazing it is. And then in volume 2, I wanted to have a mirror, like an opposite of that, where like I grew up poor and I know what it was like to have a rich friend or a kid who came from a more well-off family. And then when they, you'd spend the night at their house and it seemed awesome. And then it was time for them to spend the night at your house and you feel kind of,
their plates match.
Yeah, I felt embarrassed that they were going to see like the condition of my house and the part of town I was in and that sort of thing. So I wanted Donatello to have that experience. And so, I mean, it's only like a couple of panels, but I wanted him, there's actually a panel where like all 4 turtles, Batman, Robin, and Nightwing and are all trying to cram into Donatello's room in the sewer in volume 2 because they were wanting to look at his computer monitor, to like go over this footage that April O'Neil had captured. And that to me was the embarrassing moment. He's been in the Batcave at this computer that he loved and actually hugged in volume 1, and now they're all crammed in his room that's literally in a sewer, probably doesn't smell the greatest. I think even Damian Robin mentions that it smells gross. So anyway, whatever. I'm rambling here, but that was something that I suggested, and James liked the idea of. He was like, this is perfect. So anyway,
I think that made it into the animated feature as well, didn't it, when he hugs the computer?
Well, the hugging the computer from volume 1, and that did make it in there, and that was James. That was James's idea. My idea was to show the embarrassing counterpart of that, where Donatello feels embarrassed for Batman to see his dwelling, to see this place that smells bad and is cramped and has 1980s monitors. Like we actually use the old CRT monitors that aren't the flat screens and stuff because he's just using whatever he has versus a billionaire's budget.
I love that sort of trope because it's so personal. And it comes back to, I can relate to that too. I remember going to the comic book store and it's like, you can get 3 books. And like back then it was like $1 a piece. So it's like that was it. That was our collection. And one of my books was always a turtle book, no matter what. So I had to pick out, I'm like, all right, I guess I'm getting Venom Lethal Protector today and Turtles. And I don't know what the third one's going to be. So,
That was wise of you. If that was your ratio, always get some Turtles.
Oh yeah. I'm a huge fan of the Turtles adventure books from starting out. It starts out and it's like mimicking the cartoon series, and then it goes off in these really crazy directions. And I think it ends up with like the Mighty Mutanimals are in hell, and you're like, what the heck happened? And it's so relevant. It's like to the 90s. They had this character Null who then showed up as a woman in the IDW series, obviously in the Universe books that you did the covers for. Yeah. But they called it The Man Who Sold the World. And I'm like, at the time, they literally pulled this from the Nirvana cover, which came out at the time. I'm like, it's so like right there with like their thumb on the pulse of what's going on. And I just always felt like it was such an underappreciated book.
Yeah. Oh, I apologize for being part of the underappreciators because I haven't seen it.
Well, I mean, it's a lot of people get into the toys, and that's how they got into Turtles. A lot of people had the video games. A lot of people had, the Mirage books. For me, it was the adventure books that got me, or the cartoon, I should say too. But that's how I get. So that begs the question: how did you first get introduced into the Turtles? What started your journey?
I'm glad you asked that because I usually have to skim over that part. I have an older cousin named Jay, who's like, I don't know, 6 years older than me or something like that. And he introduced me to a bunch of stuff that I would end up really liking as I got older. So like he introduced me to Conan. He introduced me to a role-playing system called Palladium Books that did.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Are you familiar with Palladium? Do you know?
That is probably the number 2 answer that I get when I ask people how they got introduced to Turtles.
Okay. Yeah. So Palladium Books, I didn't know that Ninja Turtle. I'd never heard of Ninja Turtles, and I didn't know they were anything but a Palladium expansion. So I remember walking into Jay's room, and he had a big room, but it was just a total mess. But I mean, that didn't matter to me. I mean, he had like books all over the place because he was really into role-playing games, and I had never role-played before. And he was telling me what role-playing games were, and I had heard of D&D and to stay away from it, as the warning when you're a kid that it's going to make you kill yourself or your parents or whatever it is. And so he didn't say the words D&D, but eventually he's like, it's like D&D, but then my brain was like, no, but anyway, he had one of the books on the ground was the Turtles one where it's the red mask, but it's Leo with his arms crossed and he's holding the two katanas and there's the circle behind him and it's a collage image. And that's what he picked up. It was kind of like he was just showing me different covers. So I saw that cover before I knew anything about the Ninja Turtles. Then he was going through and telling me, like, this is Ninjas and Super Spies, which was one of their expansions. This is Heroes Unlimited. This is just called Palladium, which was their D&D substitute. And then this is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And I'd never heard that string of words together before. And so I asked him, I was like, wait, what is it? And he repeated it. And then it's like he kind of hand waved, because this is before the cartoon, of course, but he hand waved that it was a cartoon, that it was a comic book. Because I don't know if he had the comics, or if so, maybe it just wasn't relevant. He collected comics, but basically that was my first exposure to it. Then later at a Walden's Books, which existed at one point.
Yeah, I'm from New England, so I know Walden's.
Okay. Well, I saw I think it was book 4 of the color reprints where they all had the red bandanas. Mm-hmm. And I had a little bit of my own money. And that was, I mean, they didn't have like the full series. They just had book 4. And it caught my attention. And I remembered my cousin Jay mentioning it. So I grabbed book 4. And not only was it amazing, I mean, most of that imagery is just seared into my brain. You know, I just read it over and over and looked at it over and over and redrew from it. I would, try to replicate the panels and stuff. And in the back of that, there's like a bio of both, Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird. And it says their birthdays. And although we have different birth years, Kevin Eastman and I share the same birthday, which is May 30th.
Very nice.
So it like made this the combination of all these things. I'd never heard those words in that order. The artwork were characters I'd never seen looking anything like that, but they're all like massively muscular and textured. I don't know. Everything was just awesome. It's hard for me to think of another word, but that's what got me into it. Was first that cover of the Palladium book, and then later the book 4 from Walden's Books.
Yeah, I've noticed that with Turtles, it's a certain genre that seems to find its own fans. And it's like when you see it, it just clicks for you and you're like, yes. And I've rarely met someone who's either like worked on it or anything that's like not into it or doesn't have like a really cool origin story for it. So I love that like your older cousin got you into this, and it was like, it seems almost like accidental. So
totally. Yeah, it was totally just a tangential relation to what a role-playing game was. Then later we started role-playing. We never role-played the Ninja Turtles, but we did play a little bit of Riffs, which is like a future sort of genre. It's a mix of stuff, and it had mutants and all this. And it's like it had mutant animals because like Palladium had the rights for a certain time, and then they made offshoots of the Turtles called like After the Bomb and these other stories.
The Australia and all them. Yep.
Yeah, so we never actually role-played those. But I think it's awesome that they existed in Palladium Books, because I drew artwork for Palladium Books and became friends with Kevin Symbieta, who created Palladium. So it's like I'm getting to connect to my roots as I get older. I get to connect to my younger roots. It's a very strange thing to get to know them and work on these properties. Neat. It's really, I'm privileged to get to do it. I'm lucky.
Have you gotten to a point in your career where you finally hit that one thing that you really wanted to do? Or are you still at that point where you're like, oh, I'd love to get this character or anything?
There's a bunch of stuff I'd still love to draw. So I'd love to do like a run on Superman. I've only worked on, I've only done like a couple of things over at Marvel. There's a bunch of stuff over there I'd like to draw. Captain America, Wolverine, Thor. Those are, there's obviously very popular characters, but I would love to draw them. And then I've got some creator on stuff, some fantasy and some horror type stuff.
Oh, nice.
Elf Quest was a book that was a big influence on me whenever I was younger, and I'd love to either draw some Elf Quest stuff or something related or, similar in vibe or proportion to that. So there's Hellboy. I'd love to draw Hell. I mean, there's like a long list.
That was going to be my suggestion, because I would absolutely love to see your take on Hellboy. So.
I hope so one day. I don't know. I actually drew a portfolio piece for them, because even though like I've drawn all this other stuff where you never really get past the point where, nobody's seen me draw Hellboy. They don't know if I can draw Hellboy. So it's not like Mike Mignola or Dark Horse are going to approach me to, hey, you want to draw Hellboy? We don't know if you'll do a good job or not. So I drew a portfolio piece for them just a couple months ago. And, I haven't heard anything back, and maybe I won't, but I'm doing that kind of thing all the time. Just thinking like, I would love to draw Judge Dredd. I don't know. There's a lot.
I could see you working on a lot of them, just because of like the detailed style. Like Dredd, another character who has that a lot of those Brian Boland covers. I could see that working very well with your style of art.
I'd love to. Yeah. And then at some point, I'd like to recreate What Goes Around Comes Around, page by page, which is the Ninja Turtle one shot of Leonardo, where it was the basis for the movie, even though they changed it.
Yeah, that's the micro series number 4, I think, or something. But that's a great book. Yeah,
it doesn't make any sense that I'd be able to do this, but I would love to redraw every page of that whole story, because that is the story. That to me is the best Ninja Turtle story. I'm also a Leo guy.
Yes.
Leonardo's my favorite.
And you know what? I figured as much, because Leo is the first one and the only one that put hands on Batman. and I figured, he's got to be a Leo guy.
Now James wrote it that way, that he actually was able to, if it was like they had to go all out, maybe that wouldn't have happened in that way. But the fact that he was able to stand out. I mean, Raphael got taken out immediately by a taser. And so, who knows what would have happened in that fight or whatever. So, but yeah, I took pride in that, was that Leo was able to hold his own whenever Batman was kind of testing their abilities. Then later when they were sparring, he was actually able to kind of trick Batman enough to get a couple points on him in the sparring session.
I love that. He's always been, to me, the person that I've wanted to be, and I think like everybody kind of gravitates towards a particular turtle. And I don't know if we do it because we think we're like them, but I think that I would like to be like Leo. And that's kind of one of the things I like about it. Like, he's an aspirational hero of mine. So, yeah, a lot of people think he's a narc, but
Well, I was about to say, most people seem to describe him as a wet blanket. Like he's always trying to quash the fun and stuff. And I can kind of get that, but that's the kind of person. When I was younger and I was in a group of friends and they were getting mischievous, I tended to I wanted to calm things down, or if things got, if two people were getting heated, I would want to try to diffuse that and stuff. And that's not because I thought, what would Leo do in this situation?
Yeah.
Personality. So yeah, you're probably right. There's, people gravitate towards the turtle that's the most like them. Maybe.
Yeah, no, I agree. Were you into, say, I see a couple action figures back there. Were you into collecting the Ninja Turtles back in the day?
Man, we were so, not to make it a sob story, we were so poor that the idea of collecting anything was, unless you're collecting something you have made, because my first sketchbook was, I had a bunch of extra scrap paper from school that I then was drawing on the back of, and my mom kind of stapled those pages together and turned it into a sketchbook for me and stuff. But yeah, my father was not in our life. Like, he left pretty early, but he at least stayed connected financially. So he gave us child support and all this other stuff. The reason I bring that up is because at one point he worked at Target, which was the first time I'd ever heard of Target. And he did send me a bunch of Masters of the Universe or He-Man figures. And so maybe they were on clearance or something, because I had like 4 Skeletors by over the course of a couple of years for like Christmas and for my birthday and stuff. I accumulated several Skeletors and a couple of Tigras. So anyway, about this, these are, nobody at home listening can see this, but what I have up on my shelf here is the NECA edition Bebop and Rocksteady, where they're in the bunny suits.
Oh, and, from the Loot Crate.
Yes, yeah. So I drew a piece of art, which is like a shredder's ancestor, the sort of.
I have that. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I drew this, and Trevor Zammit, who is the editor or the art director that I worked with at NECA, he sent me a couple of comp copies of the Loot Crate. So that's how I got this. That's actually the majority of my collection, is like what people bring to me at conventions, or make for me at conventions, or give to us as gifts. That just has become the collection.
So you're saying that we should then encourage people to bring you gifts at conventions?
No, I'm actually not saying that.
Okay.
It's very sweet when people do that, but no, we have quite a bit, and some of it, I hope no one gets offended. Some of it, we have 14 nieces and nephews. We do give some of those to the nieces and nephews. If we feel like, oh, he's really into Spider-Man and we got a Spider-Man thing, we'll give it to, I try not to say all their names because it's somebody actually figured out where we were taking photos at a birthday party in their backyard, and somebody actually figured out what housing division we were in. And I was like, that's so weird that they could figure that out. So I don't actually say their names.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that.
Yeah.
So what do they do then? Someone tries to show up at the housing and be like, "Hey, I got this copy of Masters of the Universe and Justice 2. Can you sign it?" And what? That's weird.
That might be what they're thinking. No, I ran into some people at a Best Buy who knew who I was, and they were totally well-meaning people. They were just like, "Hey, maybe we can come by your house and hang out. I'll bring some stuff over for you to sign." And to them, I mean, I'm not saying that would have been like the worst thing ever, but I'm very segmented, and when I'm at a convention, that's convention time, and when I'm at home, that's work and living life time. So yeah. So anyway, whatever. So yeah, people who bring stuff to conventions, it's very much appreciated, but don't feel like anyone has to do that.
That's cool. Do you make it out to the big ones in Chicago at all?
I did. I used to go yearly, but it's been a while since I've been to Chicago. I used to go to Wizard World Chicago Con. I did that for like maybe, I don't know, 7 or 8 years in a row or something like that. And then we switched to C2E2, which is also in Chicago. Yep. And then we started having shows that would kind of butt up against either in the same weekend or near both of those shows, that we would instead start going to those other ones. So anyway, it's just been a while since we've been to a Chicago show, but we have nothing against it. We were just getting it's like when you go to the same show year after year, after a while, you think, well, let's see what else is there. So, or what other shows we can do in that same month.
I'm with you. And then if you get to someplace else, like maybe you've never been to Connecticut, you end up going to Mohegan Sun and give those people a chance to see you. Because
for example, I'm
from Connecticut, so yeah. I would have loved but now I live in Illinois, so I'm like, yeah, come back to C2E2. Yeah. But I that's really, really an interesting perspective too, because they talk about, like, when you listen to musicians and when you go to a concert, you expect to hear the song and it's the same. Like maybe you're seeing Neil Diamond and he's singing Sweet Caroline and you're like, oh, it doesn't sound like it does on there, because he's bored. He's bored singing the same song, doing the same thing over and over. He wants to do something to entertain himself. Yeah. So maybe there's that aspect.
Yeah. There's some of that. I mean, there's a show that we do, well, until the pandemic thing. You might have heard of the pandemic thing.
Yeah.
That thing. We used to do San Diego Comic-Con every single year, and that's like the biggest.
Yeah, I think it's the show.
Yeah. But that's where I got picked up at DC Comics, and that's where I've had a lot of other firsts. I was picked up at the talent search back in 2005 for at DC for DC Comics. So and we have family that lives out there, and we hang out with them. So it's like a yearly, well, used to be. I keep talking in the present tense because it actually still feels like it's the year 2020 or something.
Doesn't it?
Like,
yeah.
It's just been like a long, long year. But we normally would go out there every year, and became like a tradition. And so maybe we'll get to go back whenever things get back to normal.
Do you hit the In-N-Out burger while you're out there?
Oh yeah. Yeah. But my Kiki's great aunt, which is who we stay with out there, she's in her 80s, but she still loves all the comic book movies. Some years she even comes to the show with us. Like, imagine at somebody imagine yourself when you're in your 80s going to a Comic-Con. Comic-Con. I don't
That's
know.
Easy. I could definitely see that. So.
Well, I'm not sure. It's a pretty physically taxing show. So, but anyway, I give her all the credit. But she always says she loves In-N-Out Burger as long as you don't take it to go, because by the time you get home, the fries have steamed and you can't eat them. Like that's what she always says, something like that. So we always have, if we go there, we have to sit down and eat. And yeah, we go there probably every year.
It's the only one I know that has cheese paper, where the cheese literally gets stuck to the wrapping of the burger too. So
Right.
It's we've I don't know. I missed that. I haven't had that since probably 2002. So, but if you're a Big Lebowski fan, you got to go.
Yeah, I've only seen Big Lebowski once. I'm so sorry to be sacrilegious. That movie, I probably need to give it. I'm in a very different mindset now than when I was a teenager watching that. But I don't drink and I don't do any drugs or anything. And not that you have to enjoy that movie, but the people who seemed, past tense, seemed to like that movie so much tended to lean that way. Like they were either into stoner comedies or were in fact stoners themselves. Again, not everyone, but I'm saying that was my experience. And maybe I just need to see it again with like a more adult perspective and just take it for what it is instead of bringing my own psychological baggage to it or something.
That's a really fresh perspective, because I've done that with reading certain comics. And I mean, there's some comics that are always going to be like perennial favorites. Like I'll always go back to Crisis on Infinite Earths, but then I'm like, all right, maybe look back on this one. Maybe I didn't like this Marvel comic way back. Like I never gave the New Mutants a chance. And now I go back and read the New Mutants and I'm like, how did I miss this? Well, it's because now that I'm mature, I'm not looking for like, Cable with a giant gun or Wolverine cutting someone up. It's like I've matured and my tastes have changed.
Yes. Yeah. You can appreciate different levels of the narrative or the artwork even that you could.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah. I am still a huge Daredevil guy, and that's never going to change. I don't think I've ever read a run of Daredevil that I was like, this is terrible. So, it's always been a consistent favorite. It sounds like you're a big Superman guy.
Since earlier I was talking about how my father was never around. I think Superman psychologically took the place of a father, like a role model, like a father figure in my life. So my first experience with superheroes in general was the Christopher Reeves Superman movies, and then the Super Friends cartoons.
Oh yeah.
So the Superman in that was like this really powerful, but always in a good mood guy who would take care of things and make sure that the right outcome happened, which is very favorable if you're without a father or something. So, but even just aside from that, I mean, there's other stuff to him, but that's what probably connected me to liking Superman to begin with. And then since then, actually reading stories that were well written, that's good. But yeah, I would love to draw something where Superman is actually in a good mood and smiling, and the struggles that he faces don't make him into a dark monster. That would be good. That's the kind of story.
We need to hook you up with Mr. Mark Waid then, because that sounds exactly like that would be a perfect match. Mm-hmm. Or Dan Jurgens, who is one of my absolute heroes.
Yeah, Jurgens is great.
I am a big Booster Gold guy, so I actually have a Booster Gold, some original art that's inked and drawn from him right up here. So
yeah,
those are like the the Superman guys. So
yeah, were you just now? You were looking up kind of off screen. Is it like hanging up there on your wall?
Yeah, it is. It's it's a page, and to me, this is like my most valuable possession. But it's like I paid $60 for it at a con, and then he signed it, and it's a page of Booster Gold number 9, where it's got Blue Beetle and Booster Gold and like a broken time sphere. It's the most inane little page and all that, but it could not be more precious.
Yeah, dude, $60 for even if it was like a pretty standard page, that's a great deal. Yeah. So how long ago was this? Was this probably...
let's see. This would have been at Mohegan Sun, probably 2010-ish. Mm-hmm. Probably at or around there.
Yeah, that's a great deal, because even back then, right now the original art market seems to be pretty nutty in a good way. I mean,
everybody's collecting right now because they can't go anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, I was talking to one of my art friends, John Samariva, who he drew the other Batman Ninja Turtles, the one that's called Batman Ninja Turtle Adventures, the more
yeah, great book.
He's a good friend. We were friends even before he got connected to that, which was weird. Anyway, but I was asking him why did he think that the original art market was up, and he was basically saying the same thing, just that he thinks that people still have some sort of budget towards their comic book habit, their interests, and now they don't have to pay for airfare and the accommodations and all this other stuff. So why not still connect to it by getting commissions via mail or ordering original artwork? And so I was like, that's a great point. I was just assuming people would clam up with their funds just because it's such a weird, unstable time in life.
It's that entertainment budget, you know?
Yeah.
It's funny you mentioned commissions, because I have a friend, and he showed on Facebook a commission that he had received of Leonardo, who's got like all these arrows and stuff for him. So our friend Phil from the Q&A Creator Con. Yep. Yeah. Shout out to Phil.
Yeah. Hey, Phil. Did he tell you how he got that piece?
No, he didn't share the story. So maybe he will at some point. I don't know.
Okay. Is it okay if I share it? Or
it's up to you. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we were at the New York show in 2014, I'm guessing. Kiki and I in New York Comic Con. And first of all, I drew that piece was like kind of the beginning of the turning point for me with the Ninja Turtles. And then that led to Batman Ninja Turtles. So that is probably a pillar piece. Like if you were to imagine somebody's, like if you could visually construct someone's career, that piece represents a lot. The one where Leonardo is on his knees and he's got just arrows and swords sticking out of him and everything. I had been working on a Conan short story at a Phoenix Comic Con and was the deadline for it was so tight that I wasn't taking commissions at that show, at the Phoenix show. And I wrapped up the pages at the show and had about an hour or so to spare where the show was about to be over. So I thought, what do I want to draw? And I thought Leonardo, like it was the first time I had drawn him in a long time. So I drew him. I took a bunch of work in progress photos so I could show it on Twitter or something later. Then after I drew that, I then decided, well, if I've drawn Leonardo over the next like a month or something, I drew the rest of the turtles and a couple of other pieces. And I basically put those on my website to use as portfolio pieces. I don't know. And of course I could sell the originals later, but it was just the stuff I wanted to draw. So I worked it in when I could. Well, flash forward to the New York show a few months or a year later, or whatever it was. I met Phil for the first time and he came by and it was either on his birthday or near his birthday. And he came by and he kept looking at the page and then we'd chit chat, then he'd leave and he'd come back like later that same day and be looking at the page and flipping through the book and looking at the page again. And he said something like, I would love to get this page, but I don't want to tell my wife. Or he said something like that. He was being cheeky with it, but I didn't know that at the time. And I actually said, I won't sell this to you if that's serious. I would rather not sell it to you. That way I'm not creating any problems with, in your marriage or whatever. And now he was joking. And later, I think like the next day or something, he brought his wife by and he was like, and this is the page I was telling you about. She was like, oh my God, let's get it. Like she loved the page as well. And plus I guess he had spoke really highly of it before. So that's basically that's how we met. Then we stayed in contact. Then later he has started doing his own conventions. And I'll be on a live stream of his in like a month. So like next month. So anyway, whatever. It was, I guess the nuance of getting to know him through that is harder to convey than I thought at the beginning of that story. But that's basic. We've seen each other at a bunch of other shows and that's just how I got to know him, was through that piece. And then that piece specifically was so significant to how I got picked up on Batman Ninja Turtles and stuff.
I mean, that's the thing too. It's like, this is not just, two people that work together or anything like that. He's coming to you from like a perspective of a fan. Like he knows the business and stuff like that, but it's like, that's a story about like you making a fan's day. and with such a pivotal piece that's so important to you. So I think that speaks a lot to, your generosity as a creator.
Oh, thank you. Thanks.
And I don't mean to blow smoke at you, something like that. I'm just saying it's like, that is a really generous thing for you to part with.
Well, it's, thank you very much. It's also, he was in that specific, interaction that we're having, he's bringing a lot of positivity to the dynamic. It's very easy to be nice and engaged with people who are so connected to the artwork you're doing and stuff. This artwork is probably the most, personal or intimate thing in my life that I can share in a public way. And so if somebody is connected to it in that way, it almost feels like you know them without having ever met them. It's a weird thing. In the same way that I feel like I know, like, suddenly 20 or 30% more about you because Leo is your favorite turtle.
You're like, well, I can trust him. So
yeah, exactly. There's like all these.
He's not going to lock me in a closet,
that automatically get check marked. Like I know these things or types of things about him that are auto filled in or something. So it was kind of like that with Phil as well. So
that's cool. Another Leo guy. So yeah. Shout out for us. So I wanted to ask you about influences on your style, because a lot of people that I talk to, we're trying to kind of pinpoint what it is, what it looks like, and a lot of people go back to Jim Lee, where just like the sheer detail of what you have and what you undertake is like there's so much in there, and it really gives us this huge Jim Lee vibe. Like, was he? He's got to be, I'm sure, some sort of influence, but I'll let you fill in the blanks of who your style influences are. Yeah,
sure. It's definitely a big mashup of Jim Lee is my all-time favorite artist for sure. That, when I think, if I had to just name one, of course, there's, it would definitely be Jim Lee. Now, Jim Lee is like probably the most famous of all time as far as a comic book artist, if you measure it with comic book sales and just how many things he's done in his career. If anyone who just happens to be listening to this doesn't know who Jim Lee is, he was a very popular artist. Yeah, exactly. A very popular artist when he drew X-Men. He drew X-Men #1, which was the highest selling comic book of all time. It sold over 8 million copies. And since then, he went on to be one of the co-founders of Image Comics. He founded Wildstorm, the studio, and then later sold that to DC Comics, and then became co-publisher and is currently co-publisher at DC Comics. That's a very short summary, but his style was one of the two books I would credit with making me want to draw comic books for a living is ElfQuest Book 3, which was a trade paperback that I stole from my local library. It's a long story. I ended up having to pay like over $40 to pay them back for this book. So I paid way more than if I just bought it outright, and it's like an old copy. And then X-Men 272, which was drawn by Jim Lee. And if you were to combine visually their two styles, Wendy Penny, who drew ElfQuest, and then Jim Lee's X-Men, if you combine them visually, you would kind of get something that looks like Arthur Adams. And so Arthur Adams is very much up my alley. When I draw the turtle,
I was going there.
yeah. Arthur Adams is amazing. When thinking about the Ninja Turtles, I don't think they get any better looking than, that book 4, the later reprints where it has What Goes Around Comes Around, and then the follow-up. So it was like the Leonardo one shot, and then the follow-up to that. I can't remember the title of that, but the stuff that was the basis for the first live action Ninja Turtles movie.
Which they switched to Raphael for the movie.
Correct. Yeah. And I always wonder if it was because, when they were writing it for the screen, they were confused because of the red bandana, or if they just thought Raphael had a more interesting pathos to connect to because he was more or less stable, like a less stable character. So he was more prone to having a bigger emotional range. So they focused on him. Anyway, it was a great movie though. I love that movie. And according to the theme song in the credits, he was the leader.
Yeah.
He's the leader of the group.
About TURTLE power by partners in crime. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Transformed from the norm by the nuclear goop. Yeah.
Right. Definitely. But
that's a karaoke tune right there.
Yeah. So the interpretation that Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird had at that time, to me, is the definitive Ninja Turtles. And so whenever I'm drawing them, I visually reference them in my brain. Sometimes I'm looking at them directly to, I don't know, the sort of the size relationships, the type of shapes that they would use, the musculature that looks almost like stone sometimes, like the way
I could see that.
Yeah. All that stuff is a big influence. I could still draw like some of the leg muscles from how, the turtles were depicted in some of those poses, because I drew them over and over as a kid. I drew from that book all the time. And that's partially how I learned how to draw legs, was from the Ninja Turtles and stuff. So anyway, so yeah, with Ninja Turtles, it's Kevin Eastman, Peter Laird. With humans and the level of detail and maybe some of the storytelling compositional stuff, it's very much a Jim Lee feel, but also pulling from any other influences along the way. There's some artists that are fantastic with storytelling and their dynamics on the page, but I don't like the way they draw faces and I don't like the way they render things, but just their flair for the dramatics or moving the eye through the page, then that's something I can learn from. So it's a big hodgepodge.
I always think of Jim Lawson like that. I'm not a fan of how he draws the turtles themselves, but his layouts are just fantastic. You're like, wow, this is a really dynamic scene.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
I can see what you're saying there.
Yeah, I would have loved to been able to have been a part of the actual physical Mirage Studios with with those group of guys. I mean, just being around all of them, I'm sure you pick up on skills. Basically in a studio environment, artists feed off of each other and pick up so much information from each other, because you can see the decision-making process of that other artist and figure out why they're doing what they're doing, and then how you can react to that or pull from that or whatever. And you're all just feeding.
Or escalate.
Yeah, or escalate, exactly. I would have loved to have been connected to that. So reading that, in the back of book 4, reading those bios, and that they have the Mirage Studios and stuff, I aspired to be a part of Mirage Studios whenever I was a kid. And now I've been very fortunate to get to meet and become friends with Kevin Eastman, and we traveled to Dublin, Ireland together, and traveled to Australia together for different conventions, and just hung out at other shows where you get to hang out for 10 minutes and then he's off to another signing,
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so that's probably the closest. And I got to work with him on the Commandy Challenge issue 9, I think it was, in 2017. It was like a story that Tom King wrote, and then Kevin Eastman and I collaborated on the artwork. So, and I got to be in his physical studio at home and stuff. That's the closest I will ever get to working at Mirage, but it was great.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's great. And Commandy's a great character. Just someone that it's like he keeps showing up, and now he's in another book at DC, and with the original version of Batman, Starfire, Sinestro, and Booster Gold. So I couldn't be happier. Oh yeah, yeah. It's like brand new. So
yeah.
That's cool. Right on the heels of Batman Death Metal, I want to say. So it's in like future state, I suppose. I'm a little bit behind. I have a stack like this, but with Last Ronin coming out, I literally am just like, I drop everything to read that book. And yesterday they just came out with the director's cut, which ironically it has the Kevin Eastman size chart where it's like Casey's this tall and this is how tall the Ronin is. So I'm like, just eating it up.
Yeah, that stuff.
Have you read it?
Oh no, I haven't read it, but I got a better experience, I think. When John Simariva and I and Kevin Eastman were all in Australia for the last year, like a year ago this week, basically, there was a series of conventions that we did, a place called Supernova, not Supernova, Supernova. And that's the guys who run the convention. And it's like there's, 2 different shows you're doing. So on one weekend you do the show, then you have a week in between just to hang out. And then the next weekend you do another show, and then you have a little bit more time before you head back to the US. And this was literally the week that the US were closing their borders for the pandemic, and and Sydney, Australia, which is where we were flying out of, they were talking about closing their borders. So this was exactly
right before Tom Hanks got COVID. Yeah.
No, it's funny. It was one day after that, we landed in Gold Coast, Australia, which is where Tom Hanks and his wife had gotten it. They were at a on location filming a movie in Gold Coast. As soon as we got off the flight, we landed in Gold Coast because that's where the second show was, and read that that Tom Hanks had just tested positive and that he was on the streets of Gold Coast taking like selfies with people the day before. So where he was the same, or the next hotel over from where we were.
Oh my goodness.
I thought it's so weird. Now, we never saw him, but I'm just saying that we were walking on the same streets that he was the day before, taking selfies with people where he didn't know he was infected with COVID yet. So we were kind of, the nervous level of it is you could potentially be near somebody who got COVID from Tom Hanks and not know it yet, and then get Tom Hanks's strain of COVID through this person. It was a very weird event. But the reason I'm bringing that up is because Kevin Eastman was working on the Last Ronin stuff, his concept work and his storytelling, while he was in Australia with us. So me, John Simariva, and then Kevin Eastman were all sitting in this room doing an art. We weren't working on the same piece, but we were just sort of drawing at the same time. And Kevin was working on Last Ronin. So he just picked up his sketchbook and gave us all the rundown. We knew who Last Ronin was, which turtle he was before it was revealed. Wow. And he was showing us all of his concept work. It really blew us away. So we got like the personalized presentation by Kevin Eastman himself, John Simariva and I did. So it was a great, now I haven't picked up the director's cut. I actually would like to, because even though we got to see his originals, Kevin Eastman's originals, it's not like I got to keep them. So I'd like, so I'd like to get that book so that I have them in my possession, you know. And seeing some of Kevin's sketch work was transformative to me. Like in 2015, right after it was announced that I was doing Batman Ninja Turtles, I got to go out to the San Diego Art Gallery that I don't know if they're still open now, but they were for a while. He was the curator for it. And they had a couple of Kevin Eastman sketchbooks, his Ninja Turtle sketchbooks from whenever he did the first movie's adaptation. And so he had all these sketches of how he was going to translate the live action film back into a comic. And the guy who was running the art gallery at the time, once he knew who I was, he took them out of their case. He was like, "Yeah, dude, feel free to flip through them." And I was like, whoa, it was like a transformative experience in that I got to see it was like I was in his journal or his diary. Do you know what I mean? It's such, to see somebody's sketch work and when they're working something out on the page, that's like the most personal, just about the most personal thing you can connect with another artist on. You're getting to see their brain on the paper. And here I am holding it, and he's a hero of mine back then, as he is now, getting to flip through this stuff and having it right up in my face. It was amazing. So getting to see another person's sketch work is sometimes better than seeing their finished, polished work, you know? So anyway, sorry. Last Ronin, director's cut. Everyone should pick that up. It's amazing stuff. Yeah.
It's funny because I was looking at the numbers today for Last Ronin, and it is the best-selling book. It's number one again, the second issue. And the thing that really got me is that it's cost double what the next best-selling book was. I think it was like King in Black Marvel or something like that, and that's a $4.99 book. You have an $8.99 book, which is The Last Ronin issue 2. So when people are like, "Oh, print is dead," or they're like, "People aren't going to spend this," it's like when you put something out that is that much quality, that can generate that much heat and buzz in the industry, like they're going to show up in droves. So
yeah, I mean, if nothing else, publishers should take note of that. I mean, to see, but I think also Last Ronin is there's more content to the book as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's something to take note of as well, that the price versus page count and stuff. But also it's just an awesome story as well. I actually haven't read what is it, King in Black? Is that what it's called?
Yeah, I honestly, I don't know how much I read.
I'm a fan of Ryan Stegman. I just haven't seen it. I haven't read it.
I will catch up to it eventually. I assumed it was a Spider-Man thing, and I'm not a huge Spider-Man guy. I usually I'll like pick up the trades and read them afterwards and stuff, but I read primarily DC. You know, it's just, you know, it's just kind of where my heart lies, and you get so connected to these characters, and it's like, this is just so good. And
yeah,
you know, I don't know. That's my universe there. And
no, I get that. You shouldn't. I hope that you wouldn't feel embarrassed to say that kind of thing, because
oh no, I'm quite shameless.
You should collect and connect with whatever you feel, like it. There's no boy, I'm trying to think of how to just vibe with whatever feels correct to you. So to me, I just follow specific artists. The characters are important to me, but it's more about what artist is drawing. Whatever they draw, that's what I'm going to follow.
I'm a really big Valiant fan too. So, I mean, I would love to personally see you do a Valiant book at some point. If they're, interested in getting you, but it's like, wow, how cool would it be to get you doing Shadow Man? Like this dark, hoary, sort of horror sort of thing. Like that would be really sick. So
yeah, I would love to do that. That one of my first portfolios that I ever put together when I was in high school. So when I was like 16 or whatever it was, I picked 3 characters to draw. Pardon me. And believe it or not, it was Magnus Robot Fighter, then Rai, R-A-I.
Nice.
And then Zealot.
Wow.
Now, it was a terrible portfolio, but I'm saying that those were the characters of all the other characters that I could have chosen. There was no Ninja Turtles in that. There was no Batman, no Superman. It was those 3 characters. So
we probably wanted to show something different too, because everybody draws Batman.
Yeah,
as they should. Batman's amazing, but still, it's like to show something different and to show I've got depth. I drew Magnus the Robot Fighter, so I think he's now a Dynamite. But like in Rai, that story is so similar to The Last Ronin. It's like there's a lot of really cool similarities, like futuristic city. It's interesting.
I can see that.
That's cool. Oh, I didn't know you're a Rai fan. That's really cool.
Yeah, I couldn't speak in an educated way about a bunch of, it was like I had a couple of issues of it at that time, and that I just thought it was a cool character. So that's, that's the reason I was drawing it. So, but yeah, I can see exactly what you're talking about with some of the similar themes. I hadn't thought about that. I also would love to draw, I don't know. This is something I pitched to DC, and maybe they will, maybe they won't do it. But like a Last Ronin and Batman Beyond crossover. I mean,
oh wow!
I'm not sure if they're. Yeah, I don't know if they would ever click with that. But I mean, at least some of the editors were like, "Oh yeah, we'll see what we can do." But there's so many like moving parts when it comes to trying to get a crossover like that going. It's a miracle that any of them happen.
They're the only company right now that's doing anthology books to my knowledge. So whether it's these Walmart 100-page specials where you can get like a story on Swamp Thing, Wonder Woman, and I don't know, Hour Man, but it's, or like the Halloween issue where it's like, oh, it's Raven and Wonder Woman. It's like, what's going on here? This is interesting. Deadman and Batman. And I really I missed that aspect. That was one of the most fun things about reading Hellboy, when you have like a 4-page story about how he's going to fight some vampire or like Goat King or something like that. And it's like, then you move on to the next one. And I would love to see stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I love to draw stuff like that. It's oftentimes, as long as the structure is already in place, it's the kind of thing that you can sell an editor. Well, give me, even if you haven't seen me draw this character before, it's only like an 8-page story. It's only a 10-page story. So at least if it doesn't quite work out, it's not like it doesn't ruin a year worth of material. It's just a smaller commitment. So
I was hoping they would get another, like a Turtles book like that, where you just have like these little vignette sort of stories. And they do backups and all that. And like Jenica has some, which is a really cool book. Cool character too, but like they'll have like a little backup, like a B story going on in that, and that's kind of fun. I'd like to see some more of those like bite-sized character pieces.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. And actually, going back to Batman Ninja Turtles, I think even though it's not as big of a variety, I think James does a great job of writing, even though it's connected to the larger story. There's like a big story that's happening, but then he always finds a way to fit in little character moments that makes it, even though they're not short stories within it, but it like progresses their arc throughout it, and so that you're not just swept up in the large story. You get like little character bites as well, and so in a way it feels almost like an anthology if looked at through a certain lens, where the you zoom in, you have the big picture, and hopefully that's interesting. Then you zoom into each character to connect with what they're going through. So that it feels intimate as well. This big story also feels intimate.
I noticed that too. Actually, I was just thinking about the Masters of the Universe and the Injustice book, which that had, it seemed like a lot of kind of B plot stuff going on too. And probably one of my favorite all-time comic moments when Skeletor steals the power of Shazam, which is like such a mind-blowing image to see. It's like I could not tell you how many times I have copied that picture and sent it to someone, you know, and just be like, no, you don't understand, this happened. You know?
Yeah, that was so Tim Seeley, who was the writer for Injustice versus Masters of the Universe. On a side note, he and I are doing a creator-owned book. The first issue just came out yesterday. It's called It's called Bequest, which is it's a creator-owned book. It's got fantasy elements and real-world stuff, so like swords and sorcery, but they come to this world as well. So, I mean, it just came out on Wednesday, yesterday. Anybody who's watching or listening to this, nice. It was March 17th that it came out. But anyway, the reason I bring that up is
he's killing it this year.
Yeah, Tim is awesome, and we connected really well in doing Injustice versus Masters of the Universe. So, but yeah, that was one of the things that impressed me and got me excited to want to work with him more, like on the creator-owned stuff, was his knowledge of the lore and character interactions with Masters of the Universe specifically, but how they could connect. Because for anyone who hasn't read it, like there was like a really clever shortcut to building trust within the Masters of the Universe, where Batman and Prince Adam or He-Man can now trust each other, was both Mossman and Swamp Thing are able to know the intent and knowledge, whatever each other shares, through something called the Green, which is like an interdimensional network or web of vegetation. And there's no deception in the Green. So they're able to immediately build a rapport and a trust. And that's such a clever way. Anytime that you do a crossover, there's always that. It's kind of a redundant scene, or it can be if it's done wrong, where characters have to figure out, well, how can I even trust you to know if I should fight on your side? And this was a very clever way for him to do that. And that was in the first issue. So it was very much like a big chunk of the narrative was able to almost be skipped over, which is very clever writing. And it's within character. It's not just something where you go, wait, I didn't know they could do that. It's built into the canon of Swamp Thing that Mossman could connect to. So,
and it wasn't an exposition dump either. So it was really cool.
Yeah, there's like a few sort of like a collage page essentially, but it doesn't feel like, I mean, anytime that you see or that I read like a comic where you don't, you know, how would Superman even know if he can trust this guy, you know, is in my mind, you know, a lot of the times. But in any case, Tim Seeley was able to, he wrote so many cool iconic moments, including, Skeletor gets the power of Shazam, and just assumes that he'll be able to knock out Darkseid. So they, So basically, Skeletor is able to trick Darkseid into taking out the front door of Castle Grayskull, which has never been breached in this way before. He's able to use his the Omega Sanction, or whatever it's called, his I-beams, at full blast, and he's able to over time destroy the doors, which is something that, you know, Castle Grayskull has never been penetrated in that way. Just a full frontal, you know, blast. And then once that happens, then Skeletor is like, I think now I can take him, now that he's a slightly diminished power and I've got the power of Shazam. It doesn't go well, but fun. It was really awesome to draw.
It's like one of those moments. Like I remember reading Blackest Night, and like my favorite part of it is how Scarecrow shows up with a yellow lantern ring, and it's literally like an issue or maybe like a half an issue, but it makes such a mark on you, you know. Mm-hmm. But like that was one of those things like that. And you know, maybe when I won't call him Adam, but I'll say maybe when He-Man is fighting Lion-O in your Thundercats crossover, and then there's that iconic where he's stabbing him through the chest, and it's like, oh my god, that took me back to like when Optimus Prime dies in the Transformers movie, and I had a little man tear come down, and I'm like, oh
no. Yeah, there's in the very first issue of He-Man Thundercats, the sorceress, who's actually not the sorceress, it's Mum-Ra in disguise, tricks Adam out of his sword and then impales him with it, which I know you've read that. And then Prince Adam, since he's touching the sword, is able to now, you know, call upon the power of Grayskull, and then he pops into He-Man. So now he's at full power. But it's, I don't know, stuff like that. And that was written by, Rob David and Lloyd Goldfine, the He-Man Thundercats crossover. So I've been all three of those, so Batman Ninja Turtles, all three volumes, and then He-Man Thundercats, and then Injustice versus Masters of the Universe, all very well written, in my opinion. And so it was,
I would agree. Yeah.
A really fun, each of those was really fun to jump into, because there was never a time that I felt like, because I have had this in my career where sometimes you get into a story where it's not something you really connect with very well. And you're like, well, I'll just try to do my best to draw this in a way that seems like I'm enjoying it, even if you're not really. But you just try to connect to something and then hope that it seems like you were into it,
That's crazy. So do you think that we'll see something like a cover from you for Last Ronin? Is that anything that have you been asked or?
Oh, I've done a cover for issue 1. And
that's right. Of course.
Yeah, that was the retailer's exclusive for Evolve Comics. I know the owner of Evolve, a guy named Brad Allen, that I've become friends with over the last couple of years. So it's not a physical store. It's like an online retailer, and at conventions, when conventions were a thing.
They will be again.
Yeah, exactly. At some point, maybe there will be again. But so I did a retailer's incentive cover for issue 1 for him, Evolve Comics, and then I did a cover for issue 3. So that has not come out yet, but they've already shown it in solicitations. So
nice. Yeah, we're starting to see those now. I think I've got like 3 of them pre-ordered. So I'll have to look for yours then.
Yeah,
I ended up with 14 covers of the first issue. So
the issue 1 that I drew was sold out from Evolve, so I don't know if they even have any more, but I'm sure they exist on the secondary market for some very high price. But in any case, yeah, I think I don't even have a copy of them yet. So
wow,
that to me is, yeah, like he usually sent they'll send like a comp copy or something. So we'll see if I end up getting that, because he said he sold out really quickly on them. So
would that be one that you read, or would you just set that aside so it would retain value?
I don't know. I mean, I would flip through it, but because I already knew the story from Kevin just flat out telling me the story, then later I actually got a PDF of it.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't so much have to read it in that way. I already read it. And I saw issue 2, like they were done with issue 2 a while in advance. So anyway, I got to read it a couple of times before the general audience saw it. So
that's awesome. Yeah, that's great. Yeah,
those are like the fringe benefits.
So I said I love your stuff in terms of like art. Do you think that you're always going to be thought of as like the Ninja Turtle guy or the He-Man guy, or maybe the crossover guy?
Yeah, I think if there was like one title that people might know me as, it would probably be the Batman Ninja Turtles guy. Before that, it was the Robin guy, because I drew Robin, and I drew like almost a 2-year run on Robin, which I love drawing Tim Drake. It would be great to get to draw him again. But yeah, maybe it would be probably the Batman Ninja Turtles guy. There was a while where, because I drew like covers for the Terminator, or the Transformers versus the Terminator crossover. And then there was a crossover called First Strike that had G.I.
that
Joe.
was great. Yeah, Mask.
Yeah, Mask.
Matt Tracker from Mask.
Transformers, Rom the Space Knight. It had like a bunch of different characters. So, and I love drawing stuff like that. I just recently drew like 15 covers for G.I. Joe. Most of them haven't come out yet.
Oh wow!
Yeah. So, but I think that's the Batman Ninja Turtles is probably the thing will probably be remembered for, and I'm quite happy for that. I was really fortunate to get to draw that.
Yeah, it's my favorite thing of yours, and I love all of your stuff. I said I have that Shredder book from the Loot Crate. I have that, and it's like that's a treasure unto itself, like this sort of samurai shogun looking Shredder and all that. I'm like, man, this thing is so cool. So,
thanks. Yeah, the reference that I got from Trevor was like a bunch of still frames from very late seasons of the Ninja Turtles cartoon, because I was really into the Ninja Turtles cartoon for like the first 3 seasons, and then I was starting to kind of age out of that.
Yeah.
But I have gone back. My Kiki got me the DVD box set, the one that's in like the Ninja Turtle van.
Oh, in the van. Nice.
Yeah, that's, and every one of my nieces and nephews have wanted to play with that, just to pick it up off the shelf and then the top and bottom immediately separate. Like that happens every time. But anyway, so I've watched some of the later seasons now. But anyway, there was like these still frames of stuff that I hadn't seen before, where it's like this ancient storytelling spirit, and then also Shredder's ancestor, who was the samurai lead, warlord or something of the Foot Clan at the time. So
yeah,
that was
the daimyo or something.
Yeah, I don't know the terminology, so I didn't even try. So I just said the leader or whatever. But it was fun getting to draw that kind of stuff, because I haven't, I love to draw Shredder and all the turtles and stuff in whatever forms they can dream up. It's fun to do.
I was just thinking, I have a hat actually that I got at where's it? GameStop, that has your version of the Shredder on it.
Yeah, your stuff. That was I can't remember what year it was, but it was like 2 years where that artwork didn't appear anywhere. I drew some artwork. It was called Dark Shredder. So he had like, the sort of demon mask that some samurais would wear as part of their armor to, kind of create like an intimidation factor. There was this suit of armor that Shredder had for this line of memorabilia or whatever it was that I drew like just 2 images, but then they were able to use them later at GameStop, like a year or two after I drew it, where he's got like these claws are like 1.5 feet long, and he's got demon mask and stuff. And Toka, who is a skateboarding cool guy who's really into Ninja Turtles that I met at San Diego Con. He posts on Instagram all the time, and he goes by Toka. He sent me some screenshots of the hat that he got, and he was like, "Did you draw this?" And I was like, "Oh yes, it finally came out." Because sometimes you draw stuff and it just gets buried, and you never.
I can imagine. You're like, "Oh, where did this end up?"
Yeah. So there was a hat, a wallet, and I thought there might have been a shirt.
I didn't buy the wallet yet, but I saw it. I was honestly kind of hoping for a watch, to be honest with you. I thought that would have been neat.
Yeah, like a close up of his face or something with the watch.
Just like anything, or maybe he's going like this or something. Whatever they do. It's just really a cool image with like the stark comparison of like the foot behind him with like the red sort of eyes, and he's just standing there, and it's really cool.
Thanks. It was a cool design. I did not design him, by the way, but I just drew my own pose and interpretation, but they had already established what he would look like costume wise.
See, maybe you can't take credit for the design, but you can take credit for the battle where Batman is fighting the Shredder, which is like every fanboy's dream. And you're like, who's gonna win? And it was tastefully done. It's like, okay, well, Shredder wins until he comes back with this big suit because he's Batman, and then he wins. So
the Batman versus the Ninja Turtles animated had the luxury of doing what James and I would have loved to do. So in the comic book version that we drew, we had like 2 pages to show a battle. And James had privately messaged me, and he said, "Dude, I'm so sorry. We've only got like 2 pages. This is issue 6. So it's the last issue of that story arc, so we had to finish it there. We didn't have any more room." And he was like, I wish that I had more room, but we only have like 2 pages for this fight. And it's like the 2 of the best martial artists that ever have existed. And we have to try to summarize what they do in 2 pages. So I did the best that I could, which was to draw like a big collage where it implies a much longer fight, but like a bunch of different small panels in the background of their exchange. But in the animated Batman versus the Ninja Turtles, they have this great fight, a much more long drawn out Batman versus the Shredder fight, where I've met with some of the storyboard artists, and they were like, "Yeah, we were just looking at all the coolest martial arts fights from every movie we've ever seen." And you just kind of vibe off of the kind of stuff that they were doing, and then putting, Shredder in this role and then Batman in that role. And man, I wish I had 20 pages to draw a fight between the 2 of them. And it would have been something similar to what they did in, the animated. But yeah, Batman and the Shredder, it's a really fun fight. And then in volume 2, we alluded to another fight that happened off screen between the two of them.
Yeah, like the Rocky 3. Yeah, it's like, who won that battle? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Who won it? I don't know. Who won it?
You can ask him. Yes.
And I really wanted to do something, and I even contacted my editor and I said, can we do like a one shot that's like a 48 page? I shot big so that if they said no and made it a smaller page count, maybe I could still get a one shot where it was just a fight between the two of them, and we would say it's like issue 3.4 or issue 4.5 or whatever, so that it would fit in between these two issues. And my editor Jim was like, no. He was just like, no, we can't do that.
Do they not like money? I mean,
exactly.
I think that would be convoluted. It's like, what? Yeah. Oh well.
It's a much less exciting answer. It's like a boring answer. It's because there's like a contract that exists.
Yeah, I figured.
We can do this number of issues and not, so they would have to renegotiate a whole contract so to fit this in. So I was like, okay. But I'd love to draw that.
Oh yeah, no, I'm absolutely with you. That's fantastic. I think the last thing I was going to ask you is just, is there any other shows or anything else maybe from like sort of a nostalgia perspective that you would like to take and move into something? I'm actually wearing a Pirates of Darkwater t-shirt right now.
Oh yeah.
Something like that, like any sort of property that you haven't touched yet that you think would be like a really cool book for you to pursue.
Yeah, Pirates of Darkwater is one of them, and I swear for those listening, that's not a setup. That's not like
woohoo!
Yeah, he really is wearing that shirt.
Yeah.
But it's not like I asked you to ask that or that you told me.
No,
it's
organic, right?
It's totally organic. I remember watching that. I don't know if you had the same experience, but you get home from school and sometimes it wasn't on, and then other times it would be because it was like they played them on Fridays. So sometimes they would play repeats, and then other times they wouldn't play it. It was very strange. You never knew when you'd actually get the next episode of Pirates of Darkwater. I would love to draw a comic book adaptation or connection with that because it was great looking characters and a cool story. It's been a while since I watched it, but I remember really liking it.
The voice actors were amazing on that show.
That's something I didn't. I'm not saying that they were not good. I just don't remember. It's been such a long time.
So George Newbern, who did the voice of Superman from the Justice League Unlimited Justice League, so he was the one who played Ren, and you had Jodie Benson, who was the voice of the Little Mermaid, doing Tula, and Hector Elizondo as Ayaz.
Yeah,
so
that's great. I think I think I've never seen this confirmed, but I think whoever drew the character studies, I think were influenced by ElfQuest. I don't know if you...
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. The sort of large Disney eyes. So there's like nowadays seeing a manga influence or a Disney influence in, American comic book artwork is pretty common. But there was a time where that was not at all common. And Wendy Penny, who drew ElfQuest, I think she was way ahead of her time by fusing that together, where she was doing American comic book sort of sensibilities, but bringing in Disney and manga influences. And so I think even now, if a modern audience looked at her work from the 70s and 80s, could probably click with what she was doing back then very easily because she was way ahead of her time. So I think that Pirates of Darkwater were cribbing from ElfQuest, which I totally get. ElfQuest is beautiful.
I think Wizards did that too. The Ralph Bakshi movie, The Wizards, they probably ripped that right from ElfQuest as well. Like some of the characters look like a direct takeoff.
Yeah, I mean, it's also possible that they're pulling from the same influences, but it's I can see very much what you mean. So the stuff, whatever Wendy was looking at, might have been the same stuff that they were looking at. So in other words, similar influences. I would love Silverhawks was something that was really.
Oh yeah, that would be amazing. Like a Silverhawks crossover with Thundercats, maybe.
Mm-hmm. I would love to that.
That would kick ass.
I mean, I would love even if there was like a 3-way of He-Man, Thundercats, and Silverhawks play an ancillary role or something where they have to go more cosmic and there's the Silverhawks are there to help. Because it seems like, I think it was inferred that there was a connection between Silverhawks and Thundercats, and it was the same animation studio and stuff, and they had very similar villains.
I think it was Rankin Bass, wasn't it?
That's a good question. I just know that at one point I was listening to behind the scenes stuff, and they were the same studio, but I can't remember the name of the studio. So probably though.
Yeah, because I always thought, I'm like, wow, this has the same animation as The Hobbit.
The Hobbit, yeah. There's some very Slythe-like creatures in The Hobbit that, I mean, it looks almost right, dead on. And I've only recently seen those Hobbit animated films, and I think I saw it last year or something. When I was a kid, I had like a vague memory of seeing something animated, but I didn't know what it was. And then just last year, my wife Kiki got me. We watched like all three films. The middle one is done by a different. It's so strange.
Ralph Bakshi with the rotoscope and all that.
Yeah,
so
it's such a weird.
It's so out there.
Yeah, and it's weird. Like, I mean, because I don't know all the behind the scenes, but it's like Rankin Bass or whatever studio got, Fellowship of the Ring, and then Return of the King. Like that was what they got the rights to, and then Bakshi got the middle one, which would be Two Towers. Like, so they're not directly connected, and they're, as far as they come obviously from the same Tolkien source material, but it's not like studios working in tandem. They just, I don't know. It's a weird thing to watch them all back to back, which is what we did in one night. We watched all three of them back to back.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, that's really cool.
Anyway, I love stuff like that, and the sort of watercolor texture in the background of the Hobbit films were just blowing me away. Like I just kept pausing it, going, "Look at that! Look at that!" Like, because you don't see animation that looks like that. Even if you used computer animation to stitch it all together, just seeing the organic quality of the animation and the background paintings and stuff were so exciting to me that nowadays, even if people use computer stuff to connect that organic stuff to stitch it together, I would love to see that. Nowadays, the animation looks too clean for me, for my taste.
Oh yeah, I'm an animation nut. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but based on The Dragon and the George by Gordon Dixon, A Flight of Dragons.
I have not seen that.
That is the same animation studio, and John Ritter voices the main character. It's a story of a man of science who develops his own like Dungeons and Dragons style game, and ends up getting sucked inside the game and becoming trapped inside the body of a dragon. So wow, and it's really, really a great one. So
that's cool, and it's the same visual style as the Hobbit animation.
It is, yeah.
Oh.
And there's some. I think James Earl Jones does one of the voices. Larry Storch, if you're a fan of F Troop.
This is so weird. I'm surprised this has flown under the radar. I mean, I guess I didn't even know about the Hobbit animated films until last year, or confirmation that my childhood memories existed. But you know what I mean? Like, I guess I can't catch it all, but that sounds like something.
It's a real like Berenstain Bear type thing. Mandela.
Yeah, exactly. Awesome. Yeah, I came from the universe that didn't have these cool animations that I got. So now I'm getting to watch them again after Dimensional Fusion or whatever it's called.
Is that the universe where Nicolas Cage did all of the movies that Keanu Reeves did, and Keanu Reeves did all of the Nicolas Cage movies? Because I want to be in that. I want to just like binge watch in that universe and then go back. Because there's a version of The Matrix out there with, that I want to see.
Oh yeah, I heard that Nicolas Cage was approached, and so was Will Smith and some other actors to be Neo potentially, but I hadn't heard anything about. Is there actually like a Mandela effect theory that Nicolas Cage?
Yeah, there's a theory out there about this, that there's an alternate dimension where that happened, and I'm like, wow, I can't imagine anyone else in Point Break. So it's just so odd.
Yeah, that's funny. Or
yeah.
I mean,
who knows?
I'd love to see Johnny Mnemonic with Nicolas Cage. That'd be interesting. That was such a weird movie.
It'd be a better movie, I think.
It'd have to be, right?
I'm a fan of the Brian Thompson in that movie, and I think who else is in that? Henry Rollins. But other than that, it's like this is probably my least favorite of the Keanu Reeves films.
But what about the dolphin?
The dolphin.
He was the best.
Kill that. Give me Darwin from SeaQuest DSV. Thank you very much.
Now we're talking. Yeah.
Yeah, that's okay. I've shown my nerd colors. I want to thank you so much for coming on, because this is amazing, and just to get to talk to you about like all this stuff. It's been a blast.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you for having me on, and thanks for letting me go over the time. I hope that doesn't create a problem for you with the length of your episode.
No, I'm sure it'll be fine.
All right, good.
It's pizza time.
And now, in a segment that we call Pizza Time, where we discuss any Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle or pizza-related food, I give you Pizza Time.
Hi everyone, and welcome to Pizza Time. Today's recipe is going to be from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Pizza Cookbook, page 113, New York Cheesecake Pizza. This one makes one 12-inch pizza. So I'm going to give you the description, then I'm going to give you the ingredients and the instructions. And then at the end, I'll give you an idea on how to lighten it up if you want to go with a little low sugar or maybe a healthier option. What's more New York than a strawberry cheesecake? How about one you can eat with your hands? Make this one in late spring or early summer with strawberries whether at their freshest. Ingredients. First for the crust. 12 full graham cracker sheets broken into pieces. 6 tablespoons unsalted butter, melted. 1/3 cup packed brown sugar. 1/4 teaspoon salt. Topping. 1 8-ounce package cream cheese at room temperature. 1/2 cup plain Greek yogurt. 1 tablespoon freshly squeezed lemon juice. 2 tablespoons of honey. 1 teaspoon of pure vanilla extract. 1/8 teaspoon fine sea salt. 2 cups thinly sliced fresh strawberries. 1/4 cup low sugar strawberry preserves. Instructions. How to make the crust. Place the graham crackers in a bowl of a food processor and then grind them until they look like sand. Step 2. Add the butter, brown sugar, and salt and pulse until combined. Step 3. Dump the mixture into a 12-inch pizza pan and press it out evenly, all the way to the edges. Use the bottom of a flat measuring cup to make sure it's packed down as much as possible. Step 4. Refrigerate for at least 1 hour. To make the topping, place the cream cheese in a bowl of an electric mixer fitted with a whisk attachment. Step 2. Beat until fluffy. Add the yogurt, lemon juice, honey, vanilla, and salt. Beat until smooth. Step 3. Spread the cheesecake topping onto the crust. Step 4. Refrigerate for 24 hours or until the cheesecake is set. Step 5. Toss the strawberries with the preserves in a medium bowl. Then spoon the mixture on top of the finished cheesecake. Slice and serve. Now, if you want to lighten it up, use 100% whole grain graham crackers, reduced fat cream cheese and yogurt, and sugar-free strawberry preserves. Thanks, everybody, and enjoy your pizza.
Cowabunga, dudes! Thank you for listening to the Epic Tales from the Sewers podcast. The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles were created by Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird. This podcast has no affiliation with Eastman, Laird, IDW Studios, Nickelodeon Studios, Archie Comics, or any other Turtles properties. This podcast is a member of the Epic Sewers Podcast Network. Be sure to check out our other great shows, some turtle-related, some not. Thanks for listening. Epic Tales from the Sewers is recorded by Justin Cooper.
Are you looking for a gift for the nostalgic nerd in your life? Try a candle from the Euphoric Tree Fort. Nostalgic novelty gifts for nerds.
From birthdays to holidays, or just because, waft these smell-o-vision candles with fragrances from your favorite shows such as
Bob's Burgers, Simpsons, Dr. Seuss, Rick and Morty, Futurama, Adventure Time, Harry Potter, James and the Giant Peach, The Nightmare Before Christmas, Coraline, The Rugrats, Steven Universe, My Hero Academia, Dragon Ball Z, One Punch Man, Pokemon, Death Note, and Fairly Odd Parents.
These soy candles won't gunk up your walls because they're dye-free, cruelty-free, and soot-free. Also, free souvenirs in every order over $20 and free shipping on orders over $75.
With exciting scents like Nog, featuring eggnog and brandy, Christmas in Whoville, Fir Tree, Peppermint Bread, and Sugar Plum, Truffula Tree, Butterfly Milk, and Birch Tree. Donuts. Donuts and pink icing, and the ever-popular Macon Bacon Pancakes, featuring bacon and buttermilk pancake and maple.
They say that smell is the strongest sense tied to memory, and if these candles don't make you nostalgic, nothing will. And remember, if you use promo code ETFS10, you'll get a discount.
Check out the website, euphorictreefort.com, for smell-o-vision candles and nostalgic gifts. Don't forget to use our code.
Hey there, this is JB.
And if you enjoy Tales from the Crypt, then check out my show, Tales from the Podcast, where myself, and usually a very special guest, sit down to discuss the TV show, the films, the animated series, as well as the original comics. So check me out every other week on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Play, and of course at talesfromthepodcast.com.
Thanks for listening, kiddies. You're all a scream.
Hi, everyone. This is Justin from the Fantastic Podcast. It's a show all about fan experiences from the things that we love. So whether it's your favorite musician, your favorite actor, maybe it could be about your favorite sports team, or maybe just someone that you spent time with watching something that you loved when you were a kid. These are the kind of stories that we talk about. We usually do a couple stories, and it's a shorter podcast, so you can listen to it on lunch at work. So please check us out at the Fantastic Podcast. You can find us where most podcasts are found. You can also find us on social media. Thanks a lot, and check out the Fantastic Podcast.
If you're into anime, manga, comic books, movie reviews, or just pop culture, Spoiler Force Podcast is the place for you. Not only do I talk about nerdy topics, I have conversations with a variety of guests, such as musicians, Comic-Con artists, cosplayers, other podcasters, and people from all over the world. Join me as I go on this journey to find ways to help others express themselves with their creativity.
Everyone thinks because you're a zombie, you don't know good coffee. Well, they're wrong. We have very active lifestyles. It's not all wandering the countryside aimlessly or scaring passing motorists. And we all love a good cup of joe. And there's only one brew that gets my seal of approval. Deadly Grounds coffee is my guilty pleasure. Bold, robust, delicious. It's coffee that can wake the dead. With over a dozen different roasts and flavors, Deadly Grounds can satisfy the most finicky of coffee addicts. The aroma is so intoxicating. It brings all of my neighbors out of the woodwork. Deadly Grounds coffee. Coffee to die for, and zombie approved. It's good to get a little deadly. Use the front door! Oh, they're so disgusting.